beautiful psalm. It is at the bottom of page 686. Psalm 148. It's about creation, generative energy, finding newness. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Or you can just do this part, because it is really the haunting and beautiful part of this. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah Adonai Shemai. Hallelujah B'Me'oroni. Hallelujah Chol Melacha. Hallelujah Kol Tzeva'at. Hallelujah Shemesh ve'Yareach. Hallelujah Kol Kochva'ot. Hallelujah Shmei Hashemayim ve'Hamayim Asher me'al Hashemayim. Hallelujah. 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 Ya'alelu et Shem Adonai Yitzvah niva'u V'yamidem le'olam Chok natan ve'lo yavor Ya'alelu et Shem Adonai Yitzvah v'nivra'u V'yamidem le'olam Chok natan ve'lo yavor. Shabbat Shalom. What I really want you to do is look around where you are, the room that you're in. Many of you who are out there are by yourselves watching this. And that is something that, let's speak, let's admit this, let's acknowledge this. Anytime that we have things that frighten us, that hurt us, that make the moment in our lives more difficult, any time that we have that, we don't openly speak about it, it gets worse. We are now 9 months into this craziness, or 8 months into this craziness. And many of us are getting lonelier by the day. So the wisdom of our tradition, the first thing we do when we wake up in the morning is say, Modeh or Moda ani lefanecha, I'm grateful before you. And so right now, even if it's hard to find, we're all grateful for something. I'm grateful to be sitting here on this chair again with the piano in front of me, guitar, and the camera's working, and you out there. I'm deeply grateful for that. And so before we begin, first of all, find something right now, especially if you're by yourself, but even if you're with your family around you, if there's multiple of you, then go around the room right now. Everyone, this quickly, say something you're thankful for. If you're by yourself, say it out loud. Okay, now look around you. We don't have a temple anymore. I don't want a temple anymore. I don't want animal sacrifice to be the center of our religion. And so the wisdom of our tradition is we moved the temple to, well, wherever we were. One of the names of God in the Talmud is makom, which means place, which means that wherever we define as our place has the potential of being the place of God. It's not automatic. We have to have some intentionality. So look around. That's the temple. Right now, what you see, the space that you're in, that is our sacred space. On page 160 in our prayer books, we acknowledge that. We begin our formal service together by saying how beautiful are the tents that the people of Israel create. That's us. So here we are. Look around. Create the intention that that is your temple. Collectively, all these spaces that we're in are our temples. We are on sacred ground. We should honor that.
Ma tovu Ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael Ma tovu Ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael ואני ברוב חסדך אבוא ותך אשתחווה אל היכל קודשך ביראתך אדוני אהבתי מעון ביתך ומקום משכן כבודך משכן כבודך מה טובו אוהליך יעקב משכנותיך ישראל מה טובו אוהליך יעקב משכנותיך ישראל ואני אשתחווה ואכרע אברכה לפני אדוני עושי ואני תפילתי לך אדוני את רצון אלוהים ברוב חסדך אלוהים ברוב חסדך ענני באמת אישך מה טובו אוהליך יעקב משכנותיך ישראל מה טובו אוהליך יעקב משכנותיך ישראל משכנותיך ישראל.
We turn to page 162, start feeling our bodies, feeling the things that are working well. I'm coughing less from that cold I had over Yom Kippur. Thank goodness only a cold. I'm very grateful I only coughed once last night. My lungs are feeling good. My voice is feeling better than it was. So with gratitude we say, Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher yatsa et ha'adam b'chokhmah, uv'chavo nekavim nekavim, chalulim chalulim, galui ve'yadua livnei chisech vodecha, שאם ייפתח אחד מהם, או ייסתם אחד מהם, אי אפשר להתקיים ולעמוד לפניך. ברוך אתה אדוני, רופא כל בשר ומפליא לעשות. Page 163.
Elohai, Elohai, neshama שנתת בי טהורה היא אלוהי אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא אתה בראת אתה יצאת אתה נפקת בי ואתה משמרה משמרה בקרבי. אלוהי, אלוהי, נשמה, שנתת בי טהורה היא.
אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא, אתה בראת את יצאת, אתה נפחת בי, ואתה משמרה בקרבי, ואתה עתיד לה ממני לחיי עולם. כל זמן שנשמה בקרבי, מודה אני לפניך, אדוני אלוהי ואלוהי אבותי, שאתה הוא ריבון כל המעשים, מושל בכל הבריות, אדון כל הנשמות, ברוך אתה אדוני, המחזיר נשמות למתים. 164. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני בצלם אלוהים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני בן חורין. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשה לי כל צורכי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, פוקח עברים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, מלביש ערומים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, מתיר אסורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, זוקף כפופים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המכין מצעדי גבר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, עוזר ישראל בגבורה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, עוטה ישראל בתפארה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, הנותן ליעף כוח. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המעביר שינה מעיני ותנומה מעפעפי. Page 166. לעולם יהא אדם ירא שמיים, בסתר כבגלוי, ומודה על האמת ודובר אמת בלבבו. We should always be in awe of the eternal in private as well as in public. Speak the truth aloud and mean it in our hearts. We turn forward to page 171, and because we are in all of our sacred temples, if you are at home and you wish to, please rise. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch, leolam va'ed. והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, בימיו יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. הושיע אדוני אלוהינו להודות לשם קודשך, להשתבח בתהילתך. ברוך אדוני אלוהי ישראל, מן העולם ועד העולם, ואמר כל העם, אמן, הללויה. כל הנשמה Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Kol haneshama Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah. Page 172. Baruch Shema V'aya Olam Baruch Hu. Baruch Shema V'aya Olam Baruch Hu. Baruch Omer Me'oseh, Baruch Gozer Kayeh, Baruch Merachem al haaretz, Baruch Merachem al habriot. Baruch She'amar Ve'aya ha'olam Baruch Hu.
Shema Ve'Haolam Baruch Hu. Baruch Omer Ve'oseh, Baruch Gozeh Umkayem, Baruch Oseh Bereshit, Baruch Merachim Haaretz.
Page 174, blessed are you, our living God, sovereign of the universe, great and holy in power, source of mercy, praised by your people, worshipped and glorified by the tongue of all who love and serve you. Therefore, we praise you with the psalms of your servant David. With prayers and songs, we declare your glory, your greatness, your splendor, and your majesty. We proclaim your name, our sovereign, our God, who alone is the life of all existence, and whose name is worshipped and glorified forever and ever. Blessed are you, God, the sovereign, praised in all worship. Baruch atah Adonai, melech mehulal batish ba'chot. We move to page 179. As we have come out from all these holidays, it's supposed to be a time of joy, but it can be a time of great stress as well. We lift up our eyes to the hills. Shir Hama Lama'alot.
Esa enai el heharim, me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai, oseh shamayim ba'aretz. Al nitein lamod raglecha, al yanum shomrecha, hine lo yanum velo yishan, shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomerecha, Adonai tzilcha, ayad yeminecha yomam, Hashemesh lo yakecha, ve'yareach b'layla. Adonai yishmorecha, mikol ra yishmor et nafshecha, Adonai yishmor tzetcha uvoecha, me'ata ve'ad olam. Hallelujah, 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 el bekodsho, hallelujah, b'ki'a uzo, hallelujah, b'gvurotav, hallelujah, Kerov kulo, hallelujah, 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 b'teka shofar, hallelujah, b'neve v'chino, hallelujah, tofu machol. Hallelujah, minim veuka. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, b'tzitz le'shama. Hallelujah, b'tzitz le'tru'ah. Kol hanshama t'hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol anshama t'hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol anshama t'hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Page 199.
Baruch Adonai leolam. Amen, amen. Baruch Adonai Elohim, Elohei Israel. Osei niflaot levado, uvaruk shem kvodo leolam, vayimale kevodo, et kol haaretz amen, ve'amen.
200.
Nishmat kol chai, tevarech et shemcha, Adonai Eloheinu, veruach kol basar tefa'eh utromem, zichrecha malkeinu tamid, min ha'olam, ve'ad ha'olam, ata el, ata el.
We move forward to the middle of page 203, and we get ready to hear all of the gloriousness of the Shabbat Nusach melody that only appears when it's Shabbat. It is worth just hearing that in our head first.
Yanai, yananai, yananai. When I hear this melody, I know that it's Shabbat morning. Shochenad marom, vekadosh shemo, vechatuv lanu tzadikim baronai, lashirim navatin la, befi yesharim titromam, udivrei tzadikim atit barach, ובלשון חסידים עתיד קדש, ובקרב קדושים תתהלל. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש, בשמיים ובארץ, כי לך נאה נעלינו ולאבותינו, לעולם ועד שיעור ושפחה, קדושה. ומלכות ברכות ויראות לשמך הגדול והקדוש, ומעולם ועד עולם אתה אל, ברוך אתה אדוני, בורא כל הנשמות, ריבון כל המעשים, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלכי העולמים.
Page 206, the space of our Baruch Hu. Everything up to this point was preparing us, warming up to enter into halakhic prayer. At this point, we, in our homes and virtually in our synagogues, we make the choice to not bemoan that we don't have exactly what we want right now, but instead to deliberately say, every one of us in this second are exactly where we need to be. How do I know that? Because we're all exactly where we are. All of us have something to learn from this moment, and that is worth praising the Eternal.
Yananai, nai, nai. Yananai, nai, nai. Nananai, nai, nai. Nananai, nai, nai. Yananai, nai, nai. Yananai, nai, nai. Yananai, nai, nai. Yananai, nai, nai. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening? my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Yana nine nine nine, 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 yana nine nine nine. Blessed is the living God, whom we are called to bless. Blessed is the living God, whom we are called to bless forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotze or uvore choshech Ose shalom uvore et hakol Hakol yeducha vehakol yishbucha Vehakol yomru ein kadosh Adonai Hameir leolam kulo uyoshva Uvtuvo mechadesh bechol yom tamid Maaseh v'reishit marav u'maasecha Adonai kulam b'chochma Asita mal haaretz kinyanecha Hamelech hamromam levado me'az hamshubach ve'hamfoar Ve'amin naseh mimot olam Ve'amin naseh mimot olam. Page 209. Elohei olam, merachamecha harbim rachem aleinu. Adonu zenu tzur miskabenu, magen yishenu miskav badenu. Or chadash, al Tzion ta'ir. 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 Venizke chulanu mehera leoro. Venizke chulanu mehera leoro. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hamaoro. Ahava rabba avtanu Adonai Eloheinu Chemla gedola vitera Chamalta aleinu Avinu malkeinu Ba'avor shimcha hagadol Uba'avor avoteinu Shebatechu vach Vatlamdem chukechayim La'asot ritzonecha B'levav shalem Ken techonenu Ha'erinenu b'toratecha V'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha V'yachei levavenu Le'ahava u'irat shemecha Le'man lo nevosh Ve'lo nikalem Le'man lo nevosh Ve'lo nikalem Ki el poel shvot ata Uvanu v'charta mikol am ve'lashon Ve'kerabtanu malkeinu Le'shimcha hagadol be'ava Le'odot lecha U'liyachedecha u'la'ava Et shemecha Baruch atah Adonai habocheh b'emo Yisrael be'ahava. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך בדברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם למזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. והיה משמעות. שמעו לכם בין יתים לכם. כי מהשמיים על הארץ, ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף תתכלת, והיה לכם לציצית וניתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אדוני אלוהיכם. אמת ויציב וקיים ומקובל, וטוב הדבר הזה עלינו לעולם ועד. אמת אלוהי עולם מלכנו, צור יעקב מגן אישנו, לדור ודור הוא קיים מלכותו ונותו לעד קיימת. אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, פודנו מצילנו מעולם הוא שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך. Page 208. It is you who always helped our ancestors. In every generation, you were the shield and savior for them and their children after them. Happy indeed are those who hear your commands and set your teaching and your word upon their hearts. It is true that you are the first and that you are the last, that we have no sovereign who rescues, beside you we have no sovereign who rescues and saves us. From Egypt you delivered us, eternal our God, and redeemed us from the camp of slavery. Moses and Miriam and the children of Israel responded to you in song and great joy. All of them sang, Mi chamocha ma'elim Adonai, Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, אוספלי שיר חדשה שבחו כעולים לשמך על שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, Go'aleinu Adonai tzva'ot shemo kadosh Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai God Yisrael.
Please rise. Our Amidah is on page 222.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agit tekilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'lehavatenu v'yimotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Koneh HaKol, v'Zocher Chazdei Avot v'Imachot, Umevi Goel Livnei V'nehem, Le'ma'an Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen. Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Abraham, Poked Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechemetim Atah Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGasher, Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechaye Metim B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofech Cholim, U'Matir Asurim, Umekayem emunato mishene afar michamocha ba'al gevurot umido melach melech memit umechaye umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'amanata lechayot metim baruch atah Adonai mechaye hametim. Atah kadosh v'shemecha kadosh v'roshim b'chol yom yaluch hasela. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Page 227. Moses rejoiced at the gift of his destiny, for you called him a faithful servant. You set a radiance about his head when he stood before you on Mount Sinai, bringing down in his hand the 2 tablets of stone in which it is written the Shabbat command, and so it is written in your Torah. V'shomeru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam, yanai beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti le'olam, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz, uvayom ha-shvi'i Shahavat vayinafash, uvayom hashvi'i, Shahavat vayinafash. Eloheinu, Elohei avotenu, Ritzena v'imnuchatenu, Ka'achenu v'mitzvotecha, Simchelkenu v'toratecha, Sahabenu mituvecha, Samach nafshenu v'shuatecha, v'taher libeinu, ve'ovdecha be'emet, ve'hanchilenu, Adonai Eloheinu, v'yavah u'v'ratzon, Shabbat kodshecha, v'yanuchu v'kol Yisrael, mekadshe shemecha, Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh Shabbat.
229. Our living God, be pleased with your people Israel and listen to their prayers. In your great mercy, delight in us, so that your presence may rest upon Zion. Page 231. B'shuvecha l'Tzion, Merachamim, Baruch atah Adonai, HaMachazir Shechinato L'Tzion, L'Tzion. Modim anachnu lach, She'atah v'naleinu v'lehavotenu, Le'olam va'ed, Tzorenu tzorchaynu v'genishenu atahu, L'dor v'dor nodei lechan tzepet hilatecha, Al chayenu ha'masurim be'adecha, Ve'al nishmotenu hakudot lach, Ve'al nesecha shebechol yom imanu, Ve'al nefotecha v'tovatecha shebechol et,
ערב ובוקר וצהריים, הטוב, כי לא חלו רחמך, וכן כי לא תמו חסדך, כי מעולם תבינו לך, ועל כולם יתברך בתרומם ויתנשא, תמיד שמך מלכנו לעולם ועד, וכל החיים לחסלה, ויהללו ויברכו את שמך הגדול באמת האל שתנוסתנו סלע, ברוך אתה אדוני הטוב שמך לך נאה להודות. שים, 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 שלום, שים, 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 שלום, שים, 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 שלום, טובה וברכה, שים, 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 שלום, שים, 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 שלום, שים, 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 שלום, טובה וברכה, yana na 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 na, yana na 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 na, yana na 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 na, yana na na, yana na na, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. Grant us peace, goodness, and blessing, life, grace, and kindness, justice, and mercy. Source of our life, bless us all together with the light of your presence, for in the light of your presence you give us, a living God, law and life, love and kindness, justice and mercy, blessing and peace. And in your eyes it is good to bless your people Israel, the strength to make peace. Blessed are you, eternal, blessing your people Israel with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamavarech et emot Yisrael, ba shalom. We take a moment now to step into places of private reflection. יהיו לרצון אמרי פי וגיוני בי לפניך אדוני צורי אדוני וגואלי יהיו לרצון אמרי פי והגיוני בי לפניך אדוני צורי אדוני צורי וגואלי
One of my absolute favorite movies of all time is Good Will Hunting. If you haven't seen it, this is not a spoiler alert because this happens relatively early in the movie. If you have seen it, you will recognize the moment where the two main characters, Chucky and Will, played by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, go into a bar at Harvard University, and Chucky proceeds to hit on Harvard students. And based on his accent, he is from South Boston, which it's interesting. There are very few places in the United States of America where there are prejudices against accents. And I think that in the United Kingdom, that is another sermon for a different day, but I think being aware of that, if we purport to wish to treat others the way that we want to be treated, I have heard since I've moved here very disparaging things said about certain accents. So that's not right. And that's not just from the guy speaking with a weird American accent. But because of the South Boston accent or the Southie accent, it, to the ears of the Boston or the Harvard University graduate student who decides to step in and be a bit of a jerk, it is clear to him by this accent that this person hitting on an undergrad is not educated. And so he calls him on it and says, are you a student here? Chucky says, yes, he is. Well, what are you studying? And catches him in the clear lie. And so Chucky, realizing that he is being played with, says, all right, are we going to have a problem? It's a Brooklyn accent, not Boston. I don't do a good Boston accent. Are we going to have a problem? Should we go outside? And Clark, the name of the character, says, oh, there's no problem. I was just hoping you could give me some insight into the evolution of the market economy in the southern colonies. My contention is that prior to the Revolutionary War, the economic modalities, especially in the southern colonies, could most aptly be characterized as agrarian pre-capital, to which Matt Damon will jumps in and says, of course that's your intention. Again, Brooklyn, not Boston. I'm sorry, we're going to have to live with it today. You're a first-year grad student. You just got finished reading some Marxian historian, Pete Garrison. Probably you're going to be convinced of that until next month when you get to James Lemon. Then you're going to be talking about how economies of Virginia and Pennsylvania were entrepreneurial and capitalist way back in 1740. That's going to last until next year. You're going to be regurgitating Gordon Wood, talking about, the pre-revolutionary utopia and the capital-forming effects of military mobilization. Clark, well, as a matter of fact, I won't, because Wood drastically underestimates the impact of social distinctions predicated upon wealth, especially inherited wealth. You got that from Vickers, work in Essex County, page 98, right? Yeah, I read that one too. Were you going to plagiarize the whole thing for us? You have any thoughts of your own on this matter? Or is that your thing? You come into a bar, you read some obscure passage, and then you pretend to pawn it off as your own idea just to impress some girls? Impress my friend? Nothing is said at this point by our villain. Will continues. See, the sad thing about a guy like you is about 50 years, you're going to start doing some thinking of your own, and you're going to come up with the fact that there are two certainties in life. One, don't do that. And two, you dropped $150,000 on a fill-in-the-blank education you could have gotten for $1.50 in late charges at the public library. The villain says, yeah, but I will have a degree, and you'll be serving my kids fries at a drive-thru on the way to our skiing trip. Will responds, yeah, maybe, but at least I won't be unoriginal. It's funny and painful, both, because it's true and because we've all done it. We all have unearned things that we say. We all regurgitate something at some point to make us sound important. It's human nature. I don't think I'm saying this as a surprise, and I'm not really saying it to make us ashamed of anything. This is what we do. This is an extreme example, and it resonates with us, first of all, because when we meet someone like that, how many times have we sat in our bed 6 months later and said, that's what I should have said to him. The scene is brilliant because it's everything that we've ever wanted to say to any pompous fill-in-the-blank that we've ever met in our lives. Of course, not forgetting that sometimes we are the pompous person, and someone is lying in bed 6 months later after we acted like this person. And they're saying, boy, I wish I would have had this come back to them. Unearned words, I think, are worthy of consideration. We have a stopgap. We actually have a preventative measure within Judaism. It got me into I don't want to say a little bit of trouble when I first got here, but there are cultural differences, if you haven't heard, between the United States of America and Great Britain. One of them would be how we talk about ourselves. In America, we tend to talk favorably about ourselves. And in the United Kingdom, we tend to be a little bit more demure when it comes to that. Some level of, oh, I've never done anything terribly important in my life. And you're hearing that from someone who's won a Nobel Prize. And then in America, it's like, what, Nobel Prize? No, but let me tell you what, I was the... And we make that into bigger than the Nobel Prize. One of the things that I was taught in Judaism is that we do not pass off a teaching as our own, as Clark in Good Will Hunting tried to do. And in order to prevent us from doing that, if we have learned something from someone, we quote that person. We say, I learned this from that person. And if that person that we learned it from happened to be someone from a book, then before we state that this is the teaching of Beruria or a teaching of Rabbi Yossi, we close our eyes and we visualize what Beruria or Rabbi Yossi looked like, which is a pretty powerful thing to do. If we take that stopgap moment, and I step out and say, I'd love to share this knowledge that's not my knowledge. I learned it from my rabbi who said this. It's not name dropping, it actually is the stopgap to keep me from claiming knowledge that I haven't earned myself. Last night I gave a sermon that is probably the closest to a sermon that could cause, if it's watched by certain people in a certain frame of mind, a call for me to get hashtag canceled. Because I basically spoke out against rules that compel speech. Laws that would say that we can get arrested for saying this or that. And I tried to be very clear on the distinction between that and incitement, because there's never a situation where a legal system in the West says it's okay to shout fire in a crowded theater, as it will. And there are a lot of things that lead to incitement that should indeed be illegal. If I were to call for the shooting of a group of people, I should rightfully be arrested for that. So I'm not going to call for the shooting of any people, even the sports teams that I dislike greatly. See, that was humor without calling for incitement there. But I want to look at that from a slightly different side. And I invite you, I will post that sermon this week on Facebook. I invite you to look at it. But the case that I was essentially making regarding the Tower of Babel, which we're reading in our Torah portion, is that the narrative as we usually see is, again, the vengeful God. Whenever I talk about the vengeful God, I prefer to change the language from Jewish language to external to Judaism and say, that vengeful God of the Old Testament. Of course, that's not a Jewish point of view because our God occurs in the Tanakh. It might be the same books, but they're in a different order and they're based on a different base language. And in Judaism, we don't see a vengeful God. We see the complexity of relationship, and relationship includes love, tenderness, compassion, as well as anger. If you have any relationship that does not contain any of those, that's not a legitimate relationship. We're infatuated and not actually loving someone. With love, there is anger, there is pain, there is compassion, there is fill in the blank, the entire rubric. And so why would we not have the full complexity of that, yet from external, we constantly hear, the God of the Old Testament is an angry God. Yeah, another sermon for a different day. But we read it through those eyes and we see these people who are talking with the same language, Vayhi chol haaretz sfat echad udvarim achadim, and throughout the entire earth, all spoke with a single language, and all of their words were one, or they spoke with the same vocabulary. Or, think about the word devarim, is that can be very philosophical and can be very specific. They spoke with the same thoughts, or they spoke with the same literal words. But yet they tried to build a tower to show their chutzpah to take over the place of heaven. And God says, nope, not going to happen. Let's confound their language. In other words, make them speak different languages and throw them out to the four corners of the earth. The act of a vengeful God. And the point I was trying to make last night is, without using these specific words, but let me epitomize it. If everyone's speaking with the exact same thoughts and words, that's not really a good thing necessarily. In science fiction, we call that the Borg. The Borg actually, right? That's the epitomization of what it means to speak with the same thoughts in the same language. So maybe scattering us and having us speak different languages was a positive thing. But the other aspect of that is we had people climbing for heaven. And within the Tanakh, within Jewish tradition, we have at one point God telling us, you have not earned that. And it's the great passage from the end of the book of Job, when finally, after all of the drama, and we do need as a congregation to study the book of Job sometime, it is one of the most fascinating things to sit down and actually grapple with. At the very end, after finally Job has had enough and indeed curses God, God says, all right, Job, where were you when I created the earth? You are adding human logic to something that is so much greater than you. You believe that you can grasp in your finite mind the works of infinity. In other words, you've stepped into a place of hubris, much like Clark in Good Will Hunting, much like us when we speak words that we have not earned. Now, I want to be careful as I am trying to make the point that I'm trying to make, because I'm not saying if we do not have a specific experience, we're not allowed to speak at all. Sometimes we have to. I have to deal with pastoral counseling with children. I say have to, not in, oh, woe is me. Working with youth and working with children is a joy of epic proportions. I don't have a child. And it would be very easy to say, you have not earned the right to deal with the problems that a family who has children can have because you yourself do not have that. That's what education's for, and that's what experience is for. And so there is a place for unearned knowledge. I'm talking about something a little bit different. Maybe I can try to go into the core of what I'm trying to say through a negative example. A negative example is an unearned censorship. So one of the biggest criticisms I have of historical Reform Judaism, not today and certainly not in the UK, because the UK has done the exact opposite, actually. And that was in the late 19th century, Reform Judaism, mostly in the United States, tried to edit out of our prayer books anything that did not fit our aesthetic. And our aesthetic included things we don't talk about angels, we don't talk about an ingathering of exiles in Zion, etc., etc. We don't talk, perhaps most importantly, about the theology of reward and punishment. If you pray for something and you act as you should and follow the mitzvot, then you will be rewarded with candies and goodness, or whatever we imagine we are rewarded with. And if you don't, then you will, well, God will smite you. And that, of course, in a post-Enlightenment or a post-Haskalah Judaism, Jewish Enlightenment, where we tried to step behind irrational, mystical, magical thinking into rational Enlightenment thinking, our sages of Reform Judaism found that very offensive, and the most clear way that that was done was to remove the second and the first part of the third paragraphs from the Shema. When we say the Shema is not Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That's not the Shema. That's the beginning of the Shema. The Shema is Shema Yisrael, Ve'ahavta, Ve'im Shemoah, Ve'haya. So 3 paragraphs starting with the Shema. And that's why that's confusing to us. And we think the Shema is the Shema or the Shema Ve'ahavta, but not the rest, because it was edited out. And why was it edited out? Well, 2 reasons. Number 1, the Vayim Shemoah says, if you pray, the rains will come. If you don't pray, the rains will not come. And then after that, we have a whole bunch of mentioning of tzitzit, which for a long time, especially in the radical Reform synagogues of the United States, were not worn. Yet one synagogue that I shall remain nameless that still follows those rules, I had my tallis with me many years ago and was told as I put it on that it was plenty warm enough in the synagogue I could go ahead and take my shawl off. So that editing out is what I call an unearned censorship. We had Gedolim of our tradition, truly intelligent and great people who had this narrow definition of our tradition and said, you know what, that's from the past. These are garments that were worn as part of a cultural manifestation of Judaism, not a moral or ethical one. So this belongs in the past. It differentiates us. It's non-universal. Someone who comes into a synagogue and sees people wearing this are going to say, what the heck is that? That's silly. It's not part of the dominant culture. We want to look like everyone else, so let's remove this. And certainly we're not going to think those backward thoughts like God is Santa Claus up in heaven, punishing us when we're naughty and rewarding us while we're nice. Problem is by removing those words from the prayer book, it took away our ability to earn censoring that ourselves. In other words, we never had the opportunity for generations, for 100 years in the United States before the paragraphs came back into various different Sidurim and Machzorim. We were not given the opportunity to read Vayim Shemoah. If you will pay attention to the words, and if you will listen to what I'm telling you, good things will happen. We didn't get a chance to wrestle with it and earn the right to say, I don't want to read this. And by not doing that, we didn't have the ability to learn what we have learned. What a beautiful paragraph to read and discuss the complexity of global climate change. If you pray, the rains will come, and if you don't pray, the rains will not come. What a fascinating passage now. You see, there is a complexity in our tradition around what we say. There's a complexity in the world now around what we say. And what we're discovering is that words are harmful, that words are a powerful way to tear someone else down. And the solution that we're coming to that is to censor our ability to learn from those words. How many people have lost their jobs and their livelihood because of the worst 40 or 60, sorry, not a Twitter aficionado, for the stupidest 140 words that they ever tweeted in their life? I really want us to think about this for a second. Go through and think about the stupidest, say, 20 words you've ever said together in your life. We have all said something that if it were posted today on media, we would lose our jobs, we would lose our families. Is that really the direction that we want to go? See, the other way to do it is, if the stupidest things that I could say are held up to public opinion, I do have the opportunity to perhaps to learn from them, and certainly the opportunity to lose from them. Maybe to put it a little bit differently. When something is written on the internet, it might seem to make sense to the people who are grabbing onto those unearned words. When we say them out loud, oftentimes the stupidity of our words become very, very clear. When I read something and say, hey, that makes sense, why would I read something that makes sense? Because I'm having fed back to me on every algorithm online everything that I already want to see. I have built into the algorithm confirmation bias, so unless I've deliberately tried to read left, right, center articles continuously, I'm only going to get things from the left, right, or center wherever I politically exist, and I'm going to see that over and over again. And so I take those words and I spout them out because they seemed reasonable. If I actually say them out loud, and we have the opportunity to hear those words and discuss them and have them be in the open, we can start making decisions for ourselves. We say things that we haven't earned all the time. And I'm trying to make a hard and subtle point. And that hard and subtle point is that we actually need to discuss these things that are coming into us. The second that we say everyone should be speaking like this to everyone, we are the Borg. The second that we say everyone gets to say whatever they want as long as it's not inciting, then we are going to be hurt and offended and hear awful things, but we're going to learn from those things. But moreover, what we really need to be teaching in this time is not how we can police everyone else. Because if we do that, the assumption we're making is that everyone else is the problem. We're the arbiter of what can be said and what can't be said. What we actually need to be learning is that we are responsible for what we say. And is that going to be best dealt with if I say something insulting to someone, which I do on a regular basis, sometimes, well, most of the time I believe on accident, sometimes just because I'm saying something that I disagree with someone, and the very act of disagreement today is an offensive act. Is the lesson we should be learning on how to not speak, or how to actually listen to if the words that we are saying are authentic words, if they're earned? I can sit there and say some sort of platitude like, might makes right. We say that long enough over time and we start hearing how damaging that is. We maybe learn from that. If I say a platitude, throw something out there Shakespearean. Well, it sounds good. I may have quoted a great leader in order to make my point. But have I actually earned that? Have I gone and studied that? Have I actually done the work it takes to be able to say those words? And so this boils down to one of the most difficult spiritual points. First of all, speech is spiritual. What comes out of our mouth is a reflection of our relationship with that which is greater than us. And if our words are meant to tear someone down, then we are manifesting a version of the eternal that is tearing down and destroying the world. If the words that come from us are lifting others up, then that is what we are manifesting of the eternal in the world. And so the, I think, subtle and difficult thought that I want to leave us all with in this one is, are we aware of, when we open our mouths, if what we're saying is authentic? Have we earned the words that we're saying? I'm not saying don't say something if you haven't actually studied it yourself. I'm not going to go into the Amazon and actually look at that biological study. It's not going to happen. I'm also not going to claim to be an evolutionary biologist, so I'll quote what I've read. But I haven't earned that in the same way as the expert, in the same way that for any NHS doctor who's watching this today, I have read an awful lot of stuff during COVID, but I haven't earned it in the same way that you have, and I will give your words greater weight than mine. Are we striving to repeat things that we think sound good for the sake of creating this oneness that's a false oneness? If we're all climbing to the tower to challenge the gods, I say that very deliberately in that case, not challenge the eternal, because the eternal is not Santa Claus in heaven, but challenge that which seems to be in authority over us. And when we start saying the same words, and we start believing the same thing, do we actually believe that? Has that actually changed our lives? Or have we created this externalization of our language for the sake of making sure the person to our right and left isn't going to say, ooh, you shouldn't say that. The Tower of Babel is a study on how dangerous it can be for us to utter things that we have not earned the right to utter. And a lot of those things include that you don't have the right to say your opinion. So here it is. As we open our mouths, do we invite others to make mistakes so that we can be in dialogue with each other? When we open our mouths, do we try to manifest some greater truth? How have we earned the right to say that we know what the greater truth is? Shabbat Shalom. This passage from the Tower of Babel is one of my favorites. It's short, it's sweet. For the next few weeks, I'm going to, when I read the Torah, I'm not going to read it with translation. I think it's become a little bit arbitrary because you are at home either listening along or following along in Sefaria or have a Chumash in front of you. And I want to try out for a while just working through the Hebrew. I will try to do it slowly and clearly enough that you can follow along either with the Hebrew or with the translation. But I also want to start encouraging us, it is Shabbat, by the way, that when we go through the Torah, especially in this virtual world, you can also put this on pause. Read the Hebrew with me, put it on pause, and then listen to the translation. So I want us to have an opportunity to explore this in a slightly different way. I want us to really hear the melody. At some point in the future, we're going to really try to work a little bit more on bringing in some laning classes. You don't have to chant Torah, read from Torah in this congregation, but I want to make sure that we, as we have in the past with people like Stuart and Sally, who've taught so many people so incredibly, I want to make sure we keep that opportunity up. So for a while, I want us just to hear the melody of chanting Torah. We will be reading from Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 9. In the meantime, we are on page 238, and we will start our preparation for Torah with a little music, the Lecha. Lecha Adonai Hagadula, ve'hagvura ve'hatiferet, ve'anetzach ve'ahod, ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz, lecha Adonai hamamlecha, ve'amit naseh lechol lerosh, romemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'shtagavu l'adom ragla, kadosh hu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'shtachavu lehar kodsho, ki kadosh, ki kadosh, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. We say the blessing for studying Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, eternal one, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has commanded us, who has made us holy through the commandments, and has commanded us to delve into the words of Torah, and hopefully have many different opinions as we do it. Vayhi chol haaretz fa'echad udvarim achadim, vayhi bin os aham mikedem, וימצאו בקעה בארץ שנער וישבו שם ויאמרו איש אל רעהו הבה נלבנה לבנים ונשרפה לשרפה ותהי להם הלבנה לאבן והחמר היה להם לחומר ויאמרו Hava nivne lanu ir umigdal v'rosho v'shamayim v'naseh lanu shem penafutz al pnei chol haaretz vayered Adonai lirot et ha'ir ve'et ha'migdal asher banu b'nei ha'adam vayomer Adonai Hein am echad v'safa achat lechulam v'zeh achilam la'asot v'ata lo yibatzer mehem kol asher yazmu la'asot hava nerada v'navala sham sefatam asher lo yishma'u ish sfat re'ehu Vayafetz Adonai otam misham al pnei chol haaretz vayachdelu livnot ha'ir al kein kara shma Bavel kisham balal Adonai sfat kol haaretz umisham hefitzam Adonai al pnei kol haaretz. We step into the book of 1 Kings, chapter 12. This is one of those creative haftarot that is not a traditional haftarah. Again, that's fine because there are multiple traditions of what the haftarot are. They're different in Sephardic Judaism than Ashkenaz. And in the UK Reform movement here, there are some very creative uses of haftarah. And so the passage is the revolt of the northern kingdom from the southern kingdom, which is great because if we see the unified language being split, the reflection of that, this passage is wonderful, the split of the unified kingdom, which probably historically never existed, but at least the myth or the imagination of a unified kingdom. I will read the last 5 verses, so 1 Kings chapter 12, 19 through 24. Again, if you want to follow along in Sepharia, then just click See More. on your screen there, and it will open up, and you can scroll down easily to verse 19 and read the English along with me. So 1 Kings 12, 19 to 24. And if you want to read starting verse 1, just pause right now, read up until that point to get the full story.
וישעו ישראל בבית דוד עד היום הזה, ויהי כשמוע כל ישראל כי שב ירבעם, וישלחו ויקראו אותו אל העדה, וימליכו אותו על כל ישראל. לא היה אחרי בית דוד זולתי שבט יהודה לבדו. ויבוא והבאם ירושלים, ויקהל על כל בית יהודה ואת שבט בנימין 180,000 בחור עשה מלחמה להילחם עם בית ישראל, להשיב את המלוכה לרחבעם בית שלמה. ויהי דבר האלוהים אל שמע איש האלוהים לאמור, אמור רחבעם בן שלמה מלך יהודה ואת כל בית יהודה ובנימין ויתר העם לאמור, כה אמר אדוני, לא תעלו ולא תילחמון עם אחיכם בני ישראל, שובו איש לביתו כי מאתי. נהיה הדבר הזה וישמעו את דבר אדוני וישובו ללכת כי דבר אדוני.
We step into prayers for the community. I am going to continue being incredibly repetitious and obnoxious by saying and reminding us, if you have not looked at the infection rates of COVID-19 in this country, it is way far above the absolute worst point in our first walk down. And even though our treatments are better, the entire point of flattening the curve has always been to make sure that our NHS facilities do not get overwhelmed. They're about to get overwhelmed, and that will cause deaths that we do not need. Obviously, if you have a medical condition that does not allow you to do so, then fine. For the rest of us, if we are being difficult on wearing masks or not conscientious on that one, can we please be a part of a civilized society and realize that being conscientious with hand washing, social distancing, washing our hands, not gathering in with 30 of our best friends at pub, thinking that we're not going to get caught and super spreading this. Can we please be careful and respect each other? We are going to start doing some more stuff in here with our bar and bat mitzvah kids. If there's a circuit breaker, that makes things challenging. So let's please look after each other. In this prayer for our sovereign and our government, we are included in this to be responsible citizens. Please may we do this. Please may we be responsible. It is about us. May God, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, bless our sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth. May God give wisdom to the government of this country, to all who lead it, and to all who have responsibility for its safety and welfare. May God give us all the strength to do our duty and the love to do it well, so that justness and kindness may dwell in our land. May God's peace be in our hearts so that every community of our nation may meet in understanding and respect, united by love of goodness and keeping far from violence and strife. Together may we work for peace and justice among all nations, and may we and our children live in peace. So may this kingdom find its honor and greatness in the work of redemption and the building of God's realm here on earth. May such be the divine will, and let us all say, Amen. A blessing for the state of Israel. Eloheinu v'Elahei kol hadorot shlachna birchatcha al medina Israel ve'al kol yoshveha. Shlachna orcha ve'amitatcha leman higei ha'am ve'hadrechem b'chochma u'vitvuna kedei sheyisro shalom v'glotecha v'shalva b'vetecha. Ruach achava v'havana hadidit terape kol petza ve'cha bura. Tikvat ama v'avodat b'necha tagshemna et chazon hanevi'im ki mitzion tetzet tocha u'devar Adonai Mushalayim. Let us say, Amen. We continue adding names to the list of those who are suffering from various illnesses. I'm very frightened for this time with what I'm seeing with COVID in our country. I don't want this list to get longer, and I'm afraid for our community. So please put your intentionality with me into this blessing for those who are ill, and pray that we are able to keep more from getting ill where we have an opportunity to actually do something about that. Mi sheberach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our life a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Specifically, I'd like to call out the names and offer healing blessings to Richard Kaplan, Nick Bushell, Stephanie Frenzel, Susan Crystal, Bill Myers, Ann Abbey, Jerry Levy, Steph, baby Jamie's mom, Adele Sokol, Joy Brading, the mother of Jane Mobach, Rabbi Lord Sachs, who I believe most of us understand has gotten ill, and then my Aunt April, who was just diagnosed with cancer. Special healing blessings to all of them, and now please, even if you are by yourself, call in all those names of people that you are thinking of right now. It's not traditional in Judaism to call out our own names, but if you're by yourself, no one will know. Call out your own name if you need a healing blessing. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We're towards the bottom of page 256 as we close out this moment of studying Torah and blessing our community. Ki lekach tov natati lachem, Torati al ta'azovu, etz chaim hi lemachazikim ba, v'tomecheha me'ushar, derecheha darchei noam, v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha, v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kekedem, chadesh yameinu kekedem. We step out of this place of Torah, and we recognize that it is now a place of remembering that we had an additional entire service right now in the temple, an additional sacrifice, the Musaf sacrifice. And so I just want us to take a moment and use this as a bit of a meditation for a change, meaning what is it that we are going to do to sacrifice a bit of ourselves for our community? Because sacrifice is as metaphorical as it is literal. The word for sacrifice is korban. It's from the verb lehit karev, which means to draw nearer. And we now have a community engagement coordinator, Becky, who I believe everyone knows, engaged in the larger Jewish community. An absolute gift that that lottery funding from the government is available for that. All of us are volunteers for our community. All of us are going to do something. This is an amazing time to not ask Becky what she can do for the community, but for you to start telling Becky how willing you are to step into a need of the community. How are we willing to give an additional sacrifice? With that, we remember that this is Musaf, page 284. We do a tiny bit of it. This is a great place to snap hands. The Yismechu kind of demands it. Come on, do it. No one knows. There we go.
Yismechu v'malachutecha shomerei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat Yismechu v'malachutecha shomerei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat Mekadeshei Mekadeshei Shavi Shabbat Kulam yisbehu ויתענגו מטובך שבת נשמחו ומלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת ישמחו ומלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת חמדת ימים, ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה, למעשה וראשית שבת ישמחו מלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת, ישמחו מלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת V'korei oneg Shabbat. Please rise for Aleinu on 310. Aleinu l'shabach ladon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, אשר בחר מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומשה וקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגופי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום, והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת עינו. Page 313. Therefore, Almighty God, we put our hope in you. Soon let us witness the glory of your power when the worship of material things shall pass away from the earth, and prejudice and superstition shall at last be cut off. When the world will be set right by the rule of God, and all humanity shall speak out in your name, and all the wicked of the earth shall turn to you. Then all who inhabit this world shall meet in understanding, and shall know that we are all partners in the repairing of your world. For yours alone is the true kingdom, and only the glory of your rule endures forever. So it is written in your Torah, the Eternal shall rule forever and ever, and so it is prophesied, the Eternal shall be sovereign over all the earth. On that day the Eternal shall be one, and known as one. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. We turn our thoughts to those that we have lost in recent days, as well as those that we have lost at this time in previous years. Of course, I always put all of my papers in places where I cannot find them anymore, which just happens on occasion. We specifically in our community, we think especially today of the Reuben family, as just 3 days ago we lost Pat Reuben living at the Sky House. So we think of Pat, and the burial will actually be on Monday. That is, however, a private family gathering, so unless you're specifically invited by the family, it's max numbers. We can't have any more. Please do not show up.
I know that the location and the time actually went out. Please, it's really important that you do not show up. I know we all think that we're the exception, but COVID rules are very important to follow. So unless you're specifically invited by the family, please just send blessings to the family. It's not clear if there's a Shiva or not yet. If there will be, we'll send that information out on Monday. But we think of Pat Rubin, may her memory be for a blessing. We also thinking of those in our community in Shloshim. Since I was gone last week, I did not get a chance to call out that one of our dear friends and college students who regularly attends, Leo Adams, Leo's father, Ian, died over the High Holy Days this year. And may Ian's memory forever be a blessing in our blessing with Leo and Leo's entire family. We, as well, I'd like to also mention Regina Jonas. It was her Yortzeit last week, but I wasn't here. And it's very traditional for Abraham Geiger Kolleg graduates to make sure that we always mention the Yortzeit of Regina Jonas. She died, she was murdered by the Nazis during Shabbat Bereshit. And so we're Noach this week, but the first woman in Judaism was ordained not in the 70s, not Sally Priesland, although she was the first in the United States, but indeed Regina Jonas in Berlin in 1935. And may her teachings inspire us. If you don't know who she is, it's a great time to look her up. May her memory inspire us and always be for a blessing. Also, we think of those in our community that we lost at this time in previous years. We think of David Fireman, the father of Gideon Fireman. We think of Sonia Jacob, the mother of Jeremy Jacob. We think of Alan Pollock, the father of Griselda Pollock, and of James Brading, the father of Jane Mova, in addition to Vera Schachnow, the mother of Henry Sanders. And then we think of Pinas Levy, of Mitya Philip Prince, and of Hyman Prince, the grandfather, grandmother, and grandfather of Elsha Prince, all murdered at this time in Auschwitz. May all of their memories be for a blessing, and may we never forget. If you are saying Kaddish today, as we step into this place of Kaddish, I invite you to stand. And if you are at home not saying Kaddish, I invite you to stand in solidarity with all in our community who are saying Kaddish as we step into this place of memory together. Yit Gadal. Shalom bimromah, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'meru amen. Oseh shalom bimromah, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'meru amen. May the source of compassion grant comfort to all those who are in mourning, and may we all say, amen. Announcements. First one is for Kaddish and Kiddush today. The pass is 263400. I believe Sally is leading. And I also want to throw in there, we've really built an amazing, tight community for Kaddish and Kiddush. But it's one of those things, we put that push in there when we first did it. We've had some amazing discussions among leaders in the community who are looking to discuss how we can look at it differently or expand or add things or what's working and what's not. And so just be looking for announcements over time. But if you've never tried Kaddish and Kiddush, I mean, if you're fine with the space of Kiddush on how we do this in the services here, it's still an opportunity if you're comfortable with how Kaddish is done. Dyslexia is a lot of fun sometimes, folks. It's also the ability after Kiddush to stay around and talk with people and to see people that we now haven't seen in literally 3/4 of a year. So if you've never given it a try, go into your weekly email from Sinai. If you're not getting our weekly email, why aren't you getting our weekly email? If you're a member, you should be getting our weekly email, and or look on Facebook. That gives you the Zoom link, passcode 263400. Give it a try. Just pop on. Be a part of the minyan there. Be a part of raising a glass of wine. Be a part of saying hi and having lunch even with others. So jump on. Give that one a try. Let's put another push in there to keep expanding this. As long as we're in lockdown, this is a critical part of our together worship experience and our community experience. Next announcement. It is the end of British summertime, I guess is what that's officially called here. I'm used to daylight savings. See, I'm learning more vocabulary. I learned that no one knows what a pocketbook is. It's an American word for purse, or sometimes a billfold or a wallet. So, yes, I'm trying. British summertime is over. We fall back, not forward, certain people in the Board of Trustees who try to confuse me. We fall back. In the spring, we spring forward, right? Good mnemonic there. Fall back, spring forward. Otherwise, you're going to be missing my class, which takes place at 3:30 on Sunday. So you'll be very much at the wrong time if you don't set your clocks. If you still have a manual clock, I guess our phones will automatically reset themselves. So next announcement then, adult education. New class. It is a year-long class, but seriously, it's adult education, and an hour and a half a week to learn deeper knowledge of Judaism is probably a really good thing. To look at not the what of Judaism, but the whys of Judaism. Not what is Torah, but why is Torah. And so 3:30 tomorrow. If you have signed up, you have not gotten the password yet. Those will all be sent right after Shabbat. So if you haven't signed up, just go onto the calendar on our website and you can sign up. You'll get the password for the Zoom session at that point. It's going to be a pretty full session, but that's fine. We just will all behave ourselves on Zoom. And I think those were all of the announcements. So with that, I think we finish off with another rousing rendition of Oseh Shalom, because if we step out of a place of prayer slightly more complete than we stepped into it, well, that's exactly what our tradition is asking us to do. Ya na 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 na, ya na 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 na. Nine na na nine nine nine. Ya na 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 na, ya na 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 na, ya na 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 na, ya na na nine nine nine. Oh, say shalom bimroma, yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevet, ve'yimru, amen. Oseh shalom bimroma, yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevet, ve'yimru, amen. Ya na 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 na, ya na 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 na, ya na na na, ya na 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 na, ya na 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 na, ya na na na. Oseh shalom bimroma, yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevet, ve'yimru, amen. Ya na na na, ya na 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 na, ya na 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 na, ya na 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 na, ya na 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 na, ya na na na. Shabbat shalom, everyone. if you have stuck around to do Kiddush with me, go pour yourself some fruit of the vine as we gather together to celebrate our moment of Kiddush together. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. בני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. זכור את יום השבת לקודשו, 6 ימים תעבוד ועשית כל מלאכתך, ויום השביעי ושבת לאדוני אלוהיך לא תעשה כל מלאכה, אתה ובנך וביתך, עבדך ואמתך, ובהמתך וגרך אשר בשעריך, כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, את הים וכל אשר בם, ואנח ביום השביעי, על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת, ויקדשהו. שרי חברי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן. לחיים. שבת שלום.